Hey all, can you hear me? I'm getting ready to promote still Hasselquist,
Hi.
Harris.
Hello.
Hello. I hear you all. I see the owl is still logging in.
Perfect.
Yes, I see the van in the background for Mr. Hasselquist. Yes.
Oh, I need to get rid of that, don't I? Where did that come?
Maybe for this meeting. It's
Yeah,
kind of
let
nice,
me
but
let me get rid of that. Let me get rid of that. That's for another meeting.
No, I logged in as Lawson. Just log back in then, I guess.
Hannah, do we have a list of people who will be speaking today to know who to let in and who to?
It should, there's only one case, so it should just be the applicant and then Julie Steele. I'm gonna log out and I'm gonna log back into this webinar, okay?
Okay, no problem. And I see you, Mr. Harris. Are you able to come off of unmute so I can hear you and see how your sound is?
Ma'am, no problem. This is a test of the Zoom system with Hampton, Virginia.
It's so official. Thank you.
A lot of work. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Everybody had a good weekend? Good.
Super good.
Very good. All right. So you guys can go on mute. We still got a ways to go. Just want to make some tests. I see that there's a Garrick Hannigan in, so I'm going to promote him just to see. He's a panelist, a presenter. Let's see what we got going on. Hi, Garrick. Am I pronouncing your name correctly?
Hi. Yeah, I'm with zoning. I'm technical support. Today.
Oh, technical. Oh, yes. Why did I not remember that? Okay. You know, we're just going to have to meet officially one day and then okay, there we go. So you're just going to have.
Yeah. I said everything up and it didn't stick for whatever reason.
Well, I could change your name there. I'm just going to say tech support, City of Hampton tech support. How about that?
That sounds great. Thank you.
All right, sure. No problem. City of Hampton tech support. You can go back on mute and you'll be good because I see that screen just fine. Dr. Lett, I'm getting ready to promote you so we could test. Oh, lovely profile picture. Look at that. You guys are getting all jazzed up. All right, can I see you on video? Just to test sound and video. Oh.
Sorry, I'm fixing my light in the back.
That's okay, no problem. Say, oh no.
I need to close them.
Okay, no problem. That's all it is. And you know what? Can you wipe off your camera too?
Okay.
Perfect. Yes, that actually, once you close the blinds, that'll make it a lot better.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. All right, Hannah, I'm promoting you.
Wow, our pictures look great. We look a little underdressed when we come off of.
No. Maybe just stay on there like, oh, this. I love your picture. I'm like, man.
Oh man, I feel so bad.
Don't feel bad. Don't feel bad. And you're approachable. See, there's always a positive side to you say underdressed, I say approachable.
You're great with words. Thank you so much for making me feel better.
There you go. All right, so Dr. Lett, do you have a lamp on your desk maybe to lighten your face up?
Are we unmuted? Yes.
Yes, you are unmuted.
Hi.
Wow, she was talking pretty quietly too.
Yeah.
That was
Oh no, I just started hearing you, so not to worry. It's like all I heard was, "Are we unmuted?" And that's all I heard. Okay, much better. Okay, I can see you now. All right, Margaret, I see you. Can I hear you? Can we do a sound check? Oh, you're still on mute.
Helps if I turn you on, right?
I mean, just, but yes, I can hear you fine now. Thank you.
Thank
You
you.
can go back on mute.
Okay.
Cecilia, is there anyone else trying to get in?
No.
Okay. Maybe I'll give Mr. Pope a call.
Okay. Yeah, I turned on the meeting, so it's technically recording right now. I probably should stop it, but I'll just trim it when we put it on live.
That way we can make sure everybody gets in.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we get everybody in.
Hannah,
Yes, ma'am.
the court reporter would like to have you email the the link for them, please?
Okay.
Thank you.
Hi, Frank. Just doing a sound check and video. Are you going to be a presenter today? Or are you just kind of logging in to kind of hang out?
He just wanted to watch. He doesn't
Not a
need to-
presenter.
Not a presenter. Okay, I'll put you back in as an attendee then. See you later.
Zoning, Susanna? Hey, Dacia,
Yes, ma'am.
when Mr. Pope tries to log in, it tells him that he needs to be an originator.
Can you send me his email address real quick? I'm going to invite him from the actual meeting and see if that works.
Okay, Jack, is your email johnp4645@AOL? Okay, she's gonna send you a link to that email. Okay, all right, thanks. Bye-bye. Okay, Dacia, do you want me to read it to you or email it to you?
Go ahead and read it to me. That would probably be better. Give me 1 second. Let me open up the default email and it should come up. Okay, go ahead.
All right, it is John, John, P as in Paul, 4645 at AOL.
Got it. And I'm copying you on it, just, you know.
Sure.
All right, it's just sent. So hopefully that'll work. I don't know what's going on.
Thank you. I'm also going to send you the court reporter's email. I'm going to just go ahead and email you that.
Okay.
And if you send her own invite, that would probably be helpful also.
Okay. Matter of fact, I probably still have it from the last couple of times we did it. Is it Dana?
Yeah, so it's D&K Masonry Inc., but Dana is her name.
Yep, I got it at yahoo.com.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
All right. I'm gonna also copy you.
Hmm?
All right, I'm just promoting Mr. Pope. I'm gonna ask to unmute and ask to turn on your camera so we can see and hear you clearly. And Dana is here as well. All right, there we go. I see you, Mr. Pope. But I don't hear you. Are you able to unmute?
How's that?
Oh, perfect. I hear you.
Start saying he needs technical support.
And enter you, right?
There you go.
All right, and Dana, we're going to do a sound check and with you and video, ask to start video and ask you to come off mute.
Hello.
Hello. Okay, we can hear you good. Can you all hear her?
Yep.
All right, so Hannah, Allison, Bonnie, is the gang all here? Are we waiting for anyone else?
It looks like we have our, so this is, Linda had a conflicting appointment that came up yesterday, and Tim had also a conflicting appointment. So it is just the 4 today. So we'll make sure to let the applicant know that they do have the right to defer since it is only 4 of you.
Whose phone number is this 274?
That's me.
Who's me?
It's my personal cell number, so don't read it out loud, please.
Oh, okay. That's why I just read the first 3.
Thank you. Hey, I have to change my number.
Oh, I thought you.
Hannah, do we have anybody that wants to ask any questions? Since we're supposedly in our work session?
Well, it's technically not a work session. We did not advertise having a work session.
Oh, okay. All right, never mind. We'll just sit here and look at all these pretty girls on the TV.
Glad we're not live yet, Mr. Chair. I did want to say 2 things though, since we have a minute and we're off mute, right?
We are off mute.
Okay.
Yes.
One is, since we only have 4 members, you may have already covered this when I was out of the room, you can stop me. We will have to ask the applicant if they want to defer it so that they can have the opportunity to have 5 full members, because on an appeal of a zoning administrator decision, you need 3 affirmative votes to overturn the zoning administrator decision. So the odds are a little bit worse for a person if there's only 4 people present versus 5 people present that they'll get those 3. So some people want to wait and some people don't, but we'll need to offer that to them. And the second thing I wanted to say was we have presentation rules, and they're based on the state code, that we have to give equal time to the presenters on an appeal in particular, but we also do it for variances. So if we go a little bit over on the 10-minute mark for the presentation, which might happen because there's a lot of background and pictures in this, we'll have to give the same amount of extra time to the applicant. So we'll just keep close track of that timing and let you know whatever additional time, if the board is okay with that, if we go slightly over 10, give that same amount of time to the applicant as well.
I think if you don't, you may run into a problem. Even though we have a 10-minute limit, it's not a normal variance, so.
Yeah, we definitely have to give them the same amount of time. I'm sort of asking if you're okay if we slightly go over 10, or if you'd rather we keep it straight to 10.
let's not get into controversy over 3 or 4 minutes. So.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? Not a work question, I hopefully not, but I still don't understand why, to make a decision on this, why I could not go visit the property. I went down there and looked at it, and certainly was not dangerous. It was not covered with underbrush. I just don't understand. I would love to have had all the information before this.
Well, ultimately, on this particular one, the property owner spoke with their insurance carrier, and they were not comfortable having anyone on the property. So the city staff is allowed to go on property when there are inspections, but that doesn't extend to board members automatically. We rely on property owner consent for that. So you could ask that of the applicant, but they let us know that their insurance and risk analysis was that they did not want to allow others on the property without a hold harmless agreement, which the city cannot legally give.
Okay, that explains it better. I wasn't sure where it was all coming from.
Yeah, well, in the end, that's what it has happened, yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
I think we have to see if you want to promote that for thank you.
I will. I'm going to go ahead and allow them in. The person that is in by the name of Ray, I'm going to request that you come off of unmute and then turn your camera on if possible. Are you here just watching or are you an applicant? Hi, Ray?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Are you here as an applicant or are you just watching the meeting?
Just watching the meeting. We just dialed in. We're a resident at 6 Thoroughbred. I wasn't sure. I was just getting ready. I wasn't sure that you could hear us.
Oh, no. I definitely asked you to come on. I just wanted to make sure that we properly promote you at the time. But if you're just watching as a resident, we can go ahead and put you on as an attendee. You're just fine.
That's great. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you. All right, and Heath Spencer, I'm getting ready to promote you just to see if you are a applicant or a speaker. All right, Heath, okay, there we go. I think we're getting ready to get your video up. If you can come off of mute, from unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, but we can't see you.
All right, we're gonna adjust our camera, so hold on 1 second.
Okay, will you be a speaker?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. Just wanted to make sure. All right, so as you adjust your camera, that's fine. I'm going to put you back in as an attendee until you've been called upon to start speaking.
Now come down a little.
But I'll let you adjust that. I'll keep it up so that you can get a proper adjustment.
There we go.
And I think I'll probably be able to see you now. Here we go.
Hi, Julie. Nice to see you.
Yep, there we go. All right, so I think we're good. And we can see both people. Is that Julie next to you?
It is.
Okay, fantastic. All right, so when they call upon you, I will promote you much in the same way. So you just sit tight, okay?
Thank you.
One question. Heath, are you speaking as the applicant?
Yeah, I'll speak briefly. I'm gonna turn it over to Julie, who is a little bit more, has more things to say than probably I did. But yes.
Okay, you're good to go. I can go ahead and put them back as an attendee for right now.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, y'all, just doing a time check. I'm getting ready to go put myself on mute. Just before I get on, I'm going to allow one other person, Ken Hyatt, it has logged in. I'm just making sure that they are not a speaker. So Ken, I'm going to allow you to talk. And if you could just let us know if you're just an attendee for the meeting or if you have a role as a speaker. And I'm going to ask you to unmute just to let us know. All right, Ken, if you can hear me, you can go ahead and unmute and let us know if you're just here as an attendee or if you're going to be a speaker. If not, we'll just assume you're an attendee. Okay, I will take the silence as you are an attendee, and I'll just go ahead and put you back as an attendee on mute. And Frank, if you can hear me, I'm just going to rename you and just put staff just for aesthetics. All right, and again, it's 4:58. So if you have a question for anybody that's in attendance, you see the screen that has the help screen at the top, but I will go on silent and you can reach out to any one of us if you need be. Have a great meeting.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The Board of Zoning Appeals for the City of Hampton for March 1st, please come to order. Call a roll, please.
Dr. Hasselquist,
Here.
Mr. Harris,
Here.
Dr. Lett,
Here.
Chairman Pope,
Here. We have one set of minutes from February the 1st. Do I hear a motion?
I make a motion that we approve the minutes from February 1st. Just to clarify, the agenda says March 1st, but that should be February 1st. I make a motion that we approve them.
I second that motion to approve the February 1st minutes.
Call the roll, please.
Dr. Hasselquist,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Dr. Lett,
Yes.
Chairman Pope.
Yes. We have one case to hear today.
I'm sorry. Mr. Pope, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to, I had a couple of housekeeping items to let the public be aware of regarding the digital nature of this meeting, if I could have a moment. This meeting is being held electronically due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and all members of the BZA are presenting from remote locations to undertake statutorily required business. Applicants and speakers, once the public hearing begins, we'll let you know when it's your time to speak, and you'll be given permission to turn your mic and camera on to go ahead and speak to the board. When we call your name to speak, please click raise your hand on the computer. It's under your webinar controls, so don't worry if you can't speak right now. the applicant, you'll have a combined 10 minutes to speak. There may be, you'll get the same amount of time that staff gets. I am going to go into some background on the Chesapeake Bay. So if I end up going over 10 minutes, you'll get that same amount over 10 minutes. So don't worry, but the two applicants I know who are speaking together, you'll have that combined time. If there are any issues, please see the little box that says, if you're having difficulty hearing, email. You could email or call that number. And then we have Garrick, one of our wonderful city planners, who will assist you. And then last note, this meeting is being recorded and will be posted and available online. And so, Dana, if we want to do a group swearing in right now, if all the speakers and staff presenters could go ahead and turn your mics on so we can all be sworn in as a group.
Everyone can raise their right hand. Can everyone raise their right hand, please?
Destia, can we get the applicant to be promoted for a minute?
Yes, I'm getting ready to poke. They have their hand up in the thing. I'm getting ready to promote them right now.
Thank you.
Is everyone ready?
Yes.
There we go. Everybody's ready.
Okay. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, so help you God? Thank you.
And then is it back to you, Chairman Pope?
Okay, the first, the only thing we have on the agenda tonight is AZ 20-0002, 2 Thoroughbred Drive.
Thank you.
Staff, it's your turn.
I'd like to just let the applicant know that we only have 4 members of the BZA here today. We are, one of them had had an appointment that came up, and then so we only have 4 members. So I just want to let you know, if you do want to defer, you absolutely can. You will need 3 members to vote in order to overturn the decision. So you'll have to do 3 out of 4 versus 3 out of 5. When we have a full board, it is 5. So I just want to let you know, if you would like to defer, you absolutely, that's totally fine.
I think we'll push forward.
Thank you. All right, then I will share my screen. And are we all seeing the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. This is an appeal of the zoning administrator's decision for 2 Thoroughbred Drive. It's case AZ 20-2. I'm going to give you a quick background on the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Act and then DEQ's role. So the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Act was enacted in 1988. It helps to balance the economic development and then environmental protections. The focus is on land use planning and the need to reduce pollution from stormwater runoff. It's integrated into our ordinances, zoning, stormwater, subdivision, etc. State law does require that we implement that act. And so the provisions are located in and enforced through the zoning ordinance. It operates as an overlay district. The Chesapeake Bay Preservation District is an overlay supplementing the base zoning regulations. They're in addition to the base zoning regulations. They don't replace them. And then, of course, our zoning concepts do apply as invested rights, legal nonconformities, violations, enforcement in court, etc. DEQ does review our program. They make sure that our city's Chesapeake Bay ordinance is in line with all the state criteria. They make sure that our comprehensive plan is in line, and they make sure that we are administering and enforcing the ordinance appropriately. They look at our site plans, they look at our subdivision development plans, exception requests, enforcement actions, etc. So as I talked about, the Chesapeake Bay Preservation District, it is overlays. So here's an example, and in very few areas of the city do you have the RPA and IDA in the same area, but this is a good example since it does have that. So we have the Hampton River to the right. Can you all see my mouse as it's moving? Maybe. So Hampton River to the right, and then going off the left of it is another feature that connects. And both of those are considered RPA features. So they are protected under the Chesapeake Bay Act. And there are 3 overlay sub-districts. And they range in the amount of regulations that apply. The highest level is the RPA, and that is typically in undeveloped areas or areas where the buffer is still mostly natural. There's the pink area, which is the intensely developed area, and that is a mid-level protection. And then the green, which is that's the buffer of the buffer, so it's the 200-foot buffer, and that has the lowest amount of protection. And if anyone has any questions on these, I'm happy to answer them at the end. I'm going to try and breeze through those. So this map is from our GIS, and our GIS shows a good estimate of where the Chesapeake Bay features are and where those buffers are. However, whenever somebody is coming to do a major project, we do have them submit a site-specific resource delineation, and then we as the city confirm that. So here's our confirmation process. One, a project is proposed. In this case, it was a site development plan. And then a resource delineation is submitted. The zoning ordinance determines what is required in a resource delineation, like a survey, topography. It should show all the wetlands, both tidal and non-tidal, and then all of those Ches Bay boundaries. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, they review and then confirm the location of those jurisdictional wetlands, tidal and non-tidal wetlands. And then the city confirms the resource delineation using those Chesapeake Bay regulations. So the applicant proposes development, they submit a resource delineation, the Corps confirms where the wetlands are, and then the city confirms which of those water bodies is a Chesapeake Bay protected water body based on DEQ's guidance. So how do we determine if it's an RPA feature? Again, DEQ is the one that sets the criteria for RPA features. And one of those is including non-tidal wetlands, which are contiguous and connected by surface flow to a perennial stream or tidal wetland. So that's a phrase I'm going to be saying a lot. And then the United States Army Corps of Engineers, they do the jurisdictional determination on wetland delineation. So they determine where the wetlands are, and then DEQ is they determine which criteria to use for determining what is and is not a feature. So as we talked about, the RPA features include non-tidal wetlands, which are contiguous and connected by surface flow. And of course, they define contiguous and surface flow. Contiguous being touching along a boundary or at a point, and then surface flow, water moving across the ground surface from groundwater seeps or springs and or wetland drainage, in which they include runoff from rainfall events, either overland or through a channel. So here's an example, district map here, where you can see that there are some trees back there. This is right off of Quash Street. And I put a star on Quash Street, just kind of get ourselves oriented. So we know as I go through these slides, you know where you are. So you may think that these are just a tree, it's just a forested area. But as you kind of zoom out, you can see over by Huffman Drive, there's a feature there. It's a stream right there. And if we go ahead and turn on our Ches Bay layer, you can see that that stream is connected to those wetlands off of Quash Street. So even though they may look just like a forested wetland, they are actually a Ches Bay feature because they are non-tidal wetlands connected by surface flow and contiguous to tidal wetlands. So there are also, I'm talking all about these tidal wetlands and then wetlands that are connected by surface flow. We of course have isolated non-tidal wetlands, so wetlands that aren't connected at all. They aren't connected to a Ches Bay feature. So here's an example of isolated non-tidal wetlands, and this is our Sandy Bottom Park. And you can see as we kind of do this bird's eye view here, you can see this is a map showing all of the GIS estimated RPA features, which is kind of fun. And you can see over on the west part of the city where Sandy Bottom is, there's no feature around it, and it is very much an isolated wetlands. So The appeal, now we've gotten through the background. The appeal, it's appeal the zoning administrator decision dated October 21st, 2020, determining that the wetlands on 2 Thoroughbred Drive constitute non-tidal wetlands connected by surface flow and contiguous to tidal wetlands or water bodies with perennial flow, as defined by the zoning ordinance, and accordingly are an RPA feature. So that's what's the key here is are an RPA feature. The applicable zoning ordinance section, the requirements that zoning ordinances require that we review these and that we get confirmations on where the Chesapeake Bay features are, and a site-specific boundary is confirmed, and that it's submitted with a resource delineation, and that the zoning administrator confirms and approves that resource delineation. And then resource delineation is defined. It is depicted on a physical survey. It's done by a professional engineer, landscape architect, surveyor, and it can include any of the following: topographic information, tidal shores, tidal wetlands, non-tidal wetlands, water bodies with perennial flow, and then site-specific boundaries of the RPA, IDA, and RMA, which are those Ches Bay districts we talked about. So the site, here we have 2 Thoroughbred Drive. It is rural residential. That's the zone that it's in. It's right next to the Mallory property, the Mallory tract, which will come into play in a moment, and that is zoned R11. So here's some site photos. I know you guys couldn't go out to the site, so I went out there on the 28th, so it was yesterday, and took some site photos. And that's about halfway down within the public right-of-way, the undeveloped right-of-way. I stood there and kind of took a panoramic photo. So the history of this, back in March, the subdivision development plan was submitted. The city sent a comment letter, and then we requested a resource delineation. And once we received the resource delineation, there was some back and forth on whether or not that was an RPA feature, whether or not there was one on site. And there was ongoing communication about that RPA feature. And then eventually on October 21st, I made the final determination that it was an RPA feature and that they could appeal that to the BZA. So here we have the big picture showing all of the features and then the DEQ guidance that is applicable here. In the north, you have the perennial water body. And then just to the south of that, you see the green patch. And then across Commander Shepard Boulevard, another green patch. That big green area is all confirmed wetlands by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Again, they are the final authority on what is or is not a wetland, and they have confirmed that all of that is wetlands. And part of DEQ guidance is that if there is an entire wetland and if it's uninterrupted subsequent to October 1st, 1989, that entire wetland is still treated as an RPA feature and subject to the 100-foot buffer. So you can see, even though Commander Shepard Boulevard kind of cuts through there, that all of that is still considered to be one wetland and is considered to be an RPA feature. And then in the middle here, you can see the subject site, which has that kind of blue outline. The black dotted box is where we had another, which Julie Steele went out and delineated, and the Corps confirmed those wetlands on that site. And the orange is the undeveloped right-of-way. And there was a resource delineation done that was done by Julie, and that has not yet been confirmed by the Corps. And just so you know, that was submitted after the determination was made. But I just wanted to give you kind of the whole picture here. So zooming in, this graphic comes from that wetland delineation done by Davis Environmental and confirmed by the Corps. And that was back in 2018. They're good for 5 years, so it's still valid. And you can see that green area is all confirmed as wetlands by the Corps. The white areas are areas that were uplands, but the green was all one wetland confirmed by the Corps. And you can see the subject property there, kind of in the center of the screen there. Here is the confirmation that was done by Environmental Specialties Group in 2019. Again, confirmed by the Corps. The subject site, that yellow line indicates the separation between uplands and wetlands. And then the delineation done by Environmental Specialties Group of the unapproved right-of-way, showing some uplands there. Again, this has not to be confirmed by the Corps. So here I've combined them onto that same survey here. So you can see the Corps confirmed wetlands on the Mallory parcels, the Corps confirmed wetlands on the subject property. And then the orange is that unapproved right-of-way which has not been confirmed by the Corps, but you can see that kind of, it's one wetland, it's one connected wetland. There's no significant uplands there separating the wetlands on the subject property from the wetlands that are on the Mallory parcel. So again, back to giving this bird's eye view, showing that one contiguous wetland, they're non-tidal wetlands connected by surface flow and contiguous to tidal wetlands. You can see that tidal wetland connection at the north and that perennial water body. You can see that it all is one contiguous wetland connected by surface flow all the way to that parcel there. So summary of criteria. Bonnie, did you want to jump in with this one? The determination of the administrative officer shall be presumed to be correct. And again, these are a little bit different than our standard variance criteria because it is an appeal of the determination. So the three things are: the determination of the administrative officer shall be presumed to be correct. The appellant has the burden of proof to rebut such presumption of correctness by a preponderance of evidence, and that the board shall consider the purpose and intent of any applicable ordinances and regulations when making its decision. So legally, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is the final authority in determining what is and is not a wetland. So as far as staff is concerned, the Corps confirmed wetlands are Corps confirmed wetlands, and those are confirmed wetlands. And then DEQ is the authority in determining the criteria for what is an RPA feature, including non-tidal wetlands connected by surface flow and contiguous to tidal wetlands. And then my determination is based on that Corps confirmed wetland and the application of the DEQ criteria. The other thing to consider is that new information will result in a new determination. This is an important piece here, that if there is a new determination done showing that that original confirmation of the Mallory tract is, there's new information, there are uplands there, and there is some uplands that totally separate this parcel from those other wetlands, that would be new information and it would render the previous determination void. And I would write a new determination. A determination is only relevant to the facts that were submitted at the time it was done. And again, as far as the city knows, the Corps has yet to confirm the resource delineation done in the 30-foot right-of-way. So a reminder of the summary of criteria. And staff recommends that the determination of the zoning administrator be upheld. If you have any questions. The board has any questions for me?
So I'll just note to Hannah for the record that was a 15-minute presentation.
15.
So the appellant will get 15 minutes to
Thank you.
in response. No,
Thank you.
fine.
Yeah. Hannah, I had a question.
Yes.
Yes. Oh, can you mention about the photos in the end of the packet where they came from in our packet?
Oh, yes. You did there in the package was a neighbor that submitted photos and a letter to the board. So that was what was in your packet, was some information from the neighbor.
Okay. And can you go back to your photo that you just took on the 28th?
Yes, happy to.
Now, in the photo on the bottom left there, so is that one of the ditches with full of water, or what are we looking at there?
I was about midway down the right of way, about midway in the parcel, and that is looking to the east, so looking onto their property, onto the two thoroughbred. Well, if you're looking north, that photo was taken to the right onto two thoroughbred. So
I noticed when on the neighbor said that there was a marker, a white marker in the lake behind the property, part of the property. So was that lake there when you were there? He was talking about? It should have just meant it was flooded really bad when he called it a lake.
I mean, there was a number of areas of standing water. I'm not sure if I would be able to identify a specific lake.
Okay, I was just trying to figure out what he was saying in this. When he described his one photo, he said there was a white boundary marker that was sitting in the middle of a lake. Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions of the staff by the board?
I guess I have one more for Hannah. So this property was purchased in 2018. Is that correct?
I am not 100%.
I guess my question is, Was there a determination done before the property was purchased?
For 2 thoroughbred?
Right, as far, I mean, I would think before you purchase a property, you would do a wetlands determination. So was that not done, or did they?
So in 2019 was when the resource delineation was done on their property. The one that was done in 2018 on the Mallory tract, which is really what shows that the wetlands on 2 thoroughbred are an RPA feature. Kind of without this connecting piece, we wouldn't be able to confirm whether or not it's an RPA feature. And this wasn't submitted until they applied for the subdivision development plan.
Okay, thank you.
At the time that we received this information. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Another question for staff.
Mm-hmm.
The following picture, the delineation scale there. So that was done by Environmental Specialist Group, but that was approved by the Army Corps of Engineers. That site map, that is uplands on the upper portion, delineated by that yellow line, and the wetlands are below it.
Yes.
So I get one more question for the staff. So is any of the property, I mean, when you're looking at the buffer and all, is it any of the property buildable, or is it all, when you start adding a buffer?
Yes, absolutely. In your package, you'll see, I provided, I'm sorry, I don't have it in the presentation, but I provided to the applicant kind of a rough layout showing they would still be able to get the same amount of lot yield with the, even if these are considered RPA features, they would have less buildable area.
Okay.
But
question on the right of way, wouldn't we want to wait for the determination by the Corps, or is it because it's time sensitive, or why wouldn't he wait for the Corps to make a response to the right of way?
We have, I mean, as I did not overturn my determination, or I did not reevaluate, or I should say, I would not consider writing a new determination without there being a Corps confirmed, without the Corps having confirmed that. We as staff had to take this to the board since the applicant did submit an appeal. We are required to bring that to you.
Okay,
even
thank
though.
you. Thank you.
Mr. Harris, did you have a question?
I'm fine now. Thank you.
Are there any other questions by the board for the staff? Okay, do we have any speakers?
The applicant is here, and I think they're already, I'm going to stop sharing here, and they do get 15 minutes. Sorry.
This is Bonnie. Before you start, actually, I see there's a third person that's joined the applicant. I wonder if they could identify who that is too for the record, please.
My name is Guy Sager. I think you just didn't have me in the picture earlier.
Okay.
He's a member of the owner, S&S Quality Homes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, it's your turn.
All right, thank you. I appreciate everybody being here today. Before I start talking about timelines, I do want to get into a couple things when it talks about, why we submitted. We were told when we got that determination, we had a certain number of days to appeal it, or we lost our right to appeal it. So certainly we felt like we needed to. So that's why we submitted for the appeal when we submitted for the appeal. There was a small timeline given by Hannah in her presentation. I want to go into a little bit more detail before I turn things over to our environmental consultant. This began back in October of 2019 when we had a preliminary meeting with many members of the city staff, which they recommend to do anytime you are planning on doing a development of any size, basically. There was not a member of zoning at that meeting. We had McCord, Newsom, Greg Getz, some other members. Zoning chose not to, for whatever reason, be at that meeting. Between that meeting and our first submission, which was in February of 2020, I'm sorry, we had several conversations with members of staff regarding wetlands, including putting easements to maintain the city's right to have to get to their sewer manhole, which is in that 30-foot right of way. So these wetlands are not something that hadn't been talked about from, you know, a year and a half ago. This is not something that jumped out of nowhere. So we submitted our original plan on February 28th. We got responded on March 31st. There was one zoning comment on that, had nothing to do anything with environmental impact. We've reviewed all of them. All of them were minor changes. We submitted that back to our land engineer who turned it around. Resubmitted the second zoning, or the second submittal was sent back to us May 28th. Now, in the interim, given the fact that the comments were so minor, we went ahead and closed on the property probably 15 days before we got these responded to by the city. Now, we did that after a meeting with them in 2019, as well as a first submission, which had nothing to do with any of this. And then we get these comments regarding the Chesapeake Bay after we really didn't have any, didn't know anything about it. So when they say there was back and forth between that May date and October, I would beg to differ on that. From when we got it at the end of May, we asked, show us your determination, show us how you got that. And I've got emails from 3, 4, 5 different staff members, including Steve Shapiro, McCord Newsom, all of these different people saying, Angela Lefflet, we'll have it back to you in a couple of weeks. Hannah's working on it. We'll have it back in weeks. It took almost 5 months to get this determination back. We've already owned this property. So we're sitting on this property, paying taxes, doing everything that we're doing. Can't move forward because we're waiting on this determination to come back that, it never came back. We had meetings with Steve Shapiro. We had meetings with Mary Bunting. It finally kicked free where on October 21st, we got that assessment, which now brings in the whole RPA situation that, we never had any thought that would happen. So, it's frustrating from our aspect in that interim time period between getting the second submission and that October date. We've hired Julie to come back in and evaluate the 30-foot area, to evaluate our property as it pertains to surface flow, as it pertains to the things that the city is saying are issues on this property and the reason they're having to base an RPA off of it. I'll let Julie get into that. I did want to talk a couple things on questions that were answered. It's a 5-acre tract of property. We're looking at getting 3 lots out of it. And the question that I heard was, well, how does this impact the lot yield on it? Well, we still have 3 lots, but 2 of the 3 are very, very not great building lots. The building envelopes will render these, virtually unsellable for us. So to say that there's lots, yeah, that's an accurate statement, but they're not good lots. They're lots that you're building 15-foot wide, 20-foot wide houses and having, trees 10 feet away from the house. That's not what we're looking for. And that's not what the city wants, quite frankly. That's just an inferior building place. It's not safe to have houses that close to trees. It's just not a good idea. We're in perspective, it's 3 lots over 5 acres of property. Now, the environmental stuff, I'm certainly not an expert. That's why we hired an expert to take care of it. So I'm going to turn it over to Julie now. I believe in all of everyone's packages, Julie's information, her bio is in there, what she's done, but she used to work for the Army Corps. She's been an independent environmental consultant for years, and she's a renowned authority. And that's why we brought her in to take care of this for us. So I'll turn it over to Julie Steele at this point.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Let me just briefly say that I worked for the Corps of Engineers for 13 years. I was in charge of all wetland delineations done in the state of Virginia and all enforcement actions done in the state, as well as all permit recommendations as a result of all that delineation work. I've also been the owner of my own environmental consulting company now for 25 years. I do this day in and day out. Sometimes I wonder why, but I do have extensive experience in this whole area. The main issue, I'll tell you the conclusion first, which is that in order for this area to be covered by a resource protection area buffer, there has to be surface flow and there has to be a connection to non-tidal wetlands. As Hannah has said, the area that was delineated on the Mallory tract does show that it's predominantly wetlands. However, that delineation is for a 350-acre tract of land. And so every specific area is not highly studied under that Corps of Engineers confirmation. And no one knows at this point, even though I've asked under the Freedom of Information Act for the entire file, all I received was the delineation graphic, no data stations or anything like that. That no one knows if the goal was to look at everything on a blob basis or to look at everything in a very specific basis. So I don't think the specific basis of that delineation can be interpreted towards this project. This site does not have surface flow. It has ponded water, which even the adjacent property owner in their email that they sent with the photographs says that there's water not flowing across the grass, but is certainly flowing beneath the ground. What you have to have is surface flow, and there is no surface flow. There is ponding, but the ponding does not constitute surface flow. There also is no connection to a perennial stream or perennial feature. There are connected wetlands that are connected to other areas, that are connected to other areas, that are connected to other areas. However, on the Corps of Engineers confirmation graphic, which Hannah showed you previously, there are a series of intermittent ditches throughout the Mallory parcel, but there is nowhere on the graphic, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there's nowhere on the graphic that it indicates that any of those features were actually determined to be perennial. So again, you're extrapolating from one feature to the next feature to the next feature when there is no connection to perenniality. In order to do a perennial stream analysis on the subject site or to do one on the Mallory parcel, you have to follow a specific set of procedures to evaluate a perennial stream. There's no stream on the subject site, so that would make it difficult. But if there were, you would go through a specific set of procedures and arrive at whether or not it had perennial features or not. If you were to look at the Mallory parcel, first of all, you'd have to have access to do that. And then you'd have to look at each of those ditches that are in at least somewhat proximity to the subject site to figure out if any of those had perennial features. The Corps of Engineers, when they're doing a wetlands delineation, they're doing the wetlands, not determining specifically item by item whether any of the ditches meet the requirements of being a perennial feature under the Bay Act. Because the jurisdictions are different and the goals are different, it can't be extrapolated from one to the other. There have to be specific studies that address the perenniality. So we've got no surface flow, we've got no connection to a perennial stream other than that whole series of jumps to finally get down to the area that's on the northern side of Commander Shepherd. In addition, well, also in the city's letter dated May 28th, it was stated, well, water bodies with perennial flow as determined by a qualified professional using a state-approved, scientifically valid system of in-field indicators of perennial flow should be done. That can't be done on the Mallory property because none of us have access to it. It also would be somewhat suspicious to do it anyway, since the Corps confirmation shows that the ditches are intermittent. Moving on from that, the Corps in their jurisdictional letter keeping in mind that it's for a 350 acre tract of land, so not specific. But they do state that that the areas to the southeast, which is where we are, those ditches were not specifically looked at during their site visit. So they have no specific knowledge of the ditches that are shown as intermittent on that graphic. They have no specific information about those ditches. So again, that would be a further assumption or extrapolation of information that is not there. The wetlands delineation for the 2 parcels of Mallory property to the south of our site have 2 data points out of 11 acres, and those data points are not located on the Mallory property. They're located south of the Mallory property. When you're doing a wetlands delineation per the procedures, you have to have at least typically 1 data station per acre. So that would be out of 11 acres of that Mallory property, you would have 11 data stations. The graphics do not show that that was done, nor that it existed. And that's not to criticize that delineation, because we don't know what the goal of that delineation was. But the fact remains that the specificity of that delineation cannot be extrapolated to say that the wetlands are connected uniformly to our subject site, and that our subject site should therefore be treated as one huge continuation of wetlands. And even if it was, it doesn't address the issue of surface flow. So when you're looking at the overall area, Sawyer's Swamp was shown on historic topographic maps, which I have also provided to the city. Sawyer's Swamp basically has been, and probably will continue to be, basically a big bowl that just sits there. That's why it's there. It doesn't drain. Mr. Mallory was hoping that he could make it drain when he built his ditches. And that's why the Corps of Engineers during my time shut him down, because that activity needed to be permitted. Whether or not any of those ditches are successful is another matter. I haven't been on the Mallory property to see if any of those ditches function, and if any of them were built to grade, and if any of them connect to anything. The only thing I know is that they're listed as intermittent, not perennial, and there are no perennial connections shown on the graphics. With the Bay Act guidance, and I'm looking at the same guidance that Hannah had in the presentation, it's Resource Protection Areas, Non-Tidal Wetlands is the name of the guidance document from DCR. The graphic that has been used in this discussion so far is one showing non-tidal wetlands directly connected to perennial features. The graphic that actually applies to our situation is figure 2E, E as in Edward, and that's where you have non-tidal wetlands that are not connected to a body with perennial flow, and therefore does not require an RPA. As I stated at the beginning, we have an expansive wetlands on the Mallory property. Our wetlands appear to connect in the southern area to those, but there is no surface flow. There is no perennial stream connection. So it does not meet the requirements to be considered a Bay Act feature. On the western side of the property, where the easement is located, that I did a delineation of that easement. And even though I did it in October, there was no water in the test pits, which is very unusual for that time of year, because October was one of the wettest in the last 10 years. And I've provided that drainage information to the city as well. And that was done by an independent source of maintaining data. So it showed that that was the wettest October in 10 years, and yet there was no water in the test pits. That easement area is made of a mixture of disturbed soils and does not, you've got burned areas in the soils, you've got gravel and everything else. that easement forms basically a hydrologic break between the Mallory parcel on the west and the subject site, and does not contain the hydrology necessary to make it be a surface water connection to our site. So you don't have any surface water connection on the western side of the site. You don't have any surface water connection on the southern side of the site. And so therefore it cannot be considered as a resource protection area. That delineation has not been confirmed. It has been submitted to the Corps and was submitted quite some time ago. But the person involved in that site has been temporarily serving in a supervisory capacity. And I've asked for it to be reassigned to someone else, and that has not happened yet. But the bottom line is, during the growing season, during an abnormally wet year, there still was no water in those pits. The information that the person submitted, the adjacent property owner, as I said before, shows ponded water. It shows water coming up to the surface level. That at all is not unusual for the time period involved, which is outside of the growing season. He took the pictures in January, I believe. And the pictures that Hannah took on the 28th of February, I was really pleased because it shows how dry the site is, even though we've had so much excessive rain. That ponded area that I think Mr. Hasselquist questioned is a ponded area. It is not a flowing stream, ditch, feature, anything else. It was clearly ponded in those pictures as it is ponded in the adjacent property owner's pictures. So the bottom line is that there is no surface flow connection. The wetlands are somewhat suspicious on the surrounding property because it was done on a 350-acre tract of land and doesn't have the specificity that's trying to be extrapolated from it. And since there is no surface flow, there is no perennial stream connection, no one in any of this has ever provided a point of perenniality. This site at 2 Thoroughbred should not be considered a resource protection area buffer. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
Does anybody on the board have a question for the applicant?
I have a question. Is that Ms. Steele?
Yes.
Yes, Ms. Steele. So your whole contention here is, even though, I just want to make sure that we're clear, even though the Army Corps of Engineers has specified that whole area that we saw there on the overview as wetlands, that when we start going to a specific area that's delineated on the property, that just because that connection point is connected to the wetlands does not mean that it meets the RPA requirement due to the definition that speaks of a flowing, non-tidal areas which are connected to some area that has a stream or moving body of water.
That's
Is
correct.
that it in a nutshell?
Yes, you have to have the Bay Act requires that you have a connection to a perennial body of water, and you have to have surface flow. And you don't have surface flow, and there is no perennial body of water that has been identified in any of this until you get
And
way.
another thing, and so I think one thing that you stated, just make sure that I'm clear, your apprehension was basically a lot of the area, that we're in is wetlands. And so if we continue to say, just because a wetland's connected to another wetland, it will be a continuous RPA buffer, I should say. And you're saying that is part of the issue. It shouldn't be construed as every wetland connected to another piece of property automatically makes that wetland, or should I say, a RPA buffer type situation.
That is correct. If any of the ditches that are shown in the delineation confirmation that the Corps did, if any of those ditches on the Mallory property were shown as perennial rather than intermittent, then there could be a point of discussion that it maybe should be an RPA, but none of those are listed as perennial.
All right, and the last thing is you're just considering that property, because I haven't had a chance to look at it because of the restrictions, but you're basically considering that property as pondent, correct?
The property at 2 Thoroughbred,
Yes.
yes, it is. There's ponded water on there, and even the guidance from the Bay Act requires that it be looked at under normal rainfall conditions. So far, I'm praying for normal rainfall conditions, but that hasn't happened yet. And last year was extremely wet. So ponding is not at all unusual on a property like that, and ponding does not constitute surface flow.
Wonderful, thank you.
Are there any other questions of the applicant from the board?
Yeah, I've got a few questions. Let's see, the first one. So Davis Environmental Consultants did the wetlands delineation. So are you saying that he did not look at these non-tidal wetlands, or did not look at the perennial flow, or I mean the surface water flow, or the contiguousness? He just skipped over that part, or what?
That's not part of a wetlands delineation. A wetlands delineation is to identify what is not jurisdictional wetlands on a piece of property. If you wanted them to get to the point of identifying each and every ditch as to whether or not it was perennial, ephemeral, or intermittent, that would be a very extensive study way beyond a wetlands delineation. And so the Corps is looking at what is and is not a federal wetland. And then the Bay Act, a totally separate process, is looking at whether or not there's a perennial feature as defined under the Bay Act. So the two things are separate from each other. The Corps did in their documentation, they looked at whether there's under Rapanos, which is a lawsuit, whether there's traditional navigable waters or different types, but those are different types than the Bay Act wetlands, Bay Act features.
Okay, and then another question here, and I know this is a letter that that Hannah Sabo sent you. And it talks about the determination letter by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. The approved jurisdictional determination form states that the network of ditches on the property flow into the channelized upper reaches of tributaries of Brick Kiln Creek, which is a tidal water body. So that sounds to me like the ditches are flowing to the creek. And that was from the Army Corps of Engineers.
I certainly think somewhere on the Mallory parcel, there's ditches that flow into Brick Kiln Creek. The Corps also in that same document said that they did not look at the ditches on the southeast side, which is where 2 Thoroughbred is located. So they didn't specify ditches. They also didn't specify which ditches on the Mallory property actually flow north towards Brick Kiln Creek. Those ditches on the Mallory property may or may not function. Nobody knows. They're listed as intermittent on the Corps confirmation, but there's no direction of flow listed, which again is not part of a typical wetlands delineation. So I assume because of Mr. Mallory's activities, and that's a big assumption on my part, I assume something flows towards Brick Kiln Creek, but whether or not the ones on that southern portion of the Mallory property ever make it anywhere, I have no idea. I think it probably just sits, but.
Okay. And then I guess the other question I have is the resource delineation for the right of way. I guess you guys provided it late, I guess, but we still haven't heard from the Army Corps of Engineers to confirm what you're saying. Is that correct?
We provided it after Hannah questioned whether or not that 30-foot area would provide a connection point. So that's what prompted us to go out and look at that. I did a full delineation. I submitted it to the Corps of Engineers for confirmation. We have not heard back from the Corps. As I said, the person involved at the Corps has been shifted into another position, and I asked that the project be reassigned to someone else. And I have not heard back from the Corps, and this has been several weeks on that request. And I think I submitted it, well, probably before December 22nd, because I had foot surgery on the 22nd and I hadn't done any field work after that. So I know it had to have gone in before that. But the Corps to have several months of delay before they look at something is not unusual.
I guess my concern is it doesn't seem like we have all the information that we should have. And then on top of that, we weren't allowed to visit the site, which didn't help either. I would have liked to visit the site and see the entire site. I guess there's a lot.
We were fine with you visiting the site. We just needed, and the city told us no. We said we just had to have some sort of hold harmless agreement in case somebody twisted their ankle. You know, from a law perspective, we didn't want to have any liability. We're more than happy for people to look at the site. However, you know, the city attorney actually is the one who said no.
Okay.
I would like to speak to that if I could, Mr. Chair, since
Yes, ma'am.
liability in the city attorney's office. This is Bonnie Brown. I'm a deputy city attorney. And I just want to say the city cannot indemnify any third parties. We tell the state that, the federal government that, every private party, we're not legally able to waive our liability, our sovereign immunity and provide hold harmless agreements to anyone. It's not a practice we can do. So when you asked for that, that effectively meant that we couldn't allow it, or you then stated that you couldn't allow it if we would not indemnify you. So that's why I just wanted to say for the board, it's not in this particular case, we didn't want to allow it. We don't indemnify anyone. We can't do hold harmless agreements. So that's just a quirk of Virginia law for municipalities who have sovereign immunity.
Yeah, it just surprised me. I've been on the Wetlands Board and we tramped all over all kinds of different land and swamps and trees and brushes. And I was just surprised we weren't able to go take a look at that to get more information.
Yeah, well, let me touch on that. I mean, we kind of got down to the last minute. We didn't hear that anybody on the BZA board wanted to go out there until maybe last Wednesday. And then we started talking back and forth, trying to get this whole harmless thing done. So we didn't hear back from the city attorney until I believe it was sometime Friday that, you know, we can't do that. So you basically are saying no to it. And that's not at all what we were saying. We'd love them out there, but again, we've got to have some protection for us as landholders, having, you know, people walk on the property and take a look at it. And you know, I think 3 days notice is not, you know, it's a little substandard in my mind.
I would just know, I was asked about the hold harmless agreement on Thursday and responded the same day. So I'm not sure where that miscommunication was, but that would have been a no at any time. I don't mean to be argumentative, but I don't want it to seem like we've been delaying things intentionally or hiding the ball. It's just
not saying that you were, but there's a middleman or whatever in between. So they come to us, we go back to them, then they go to you, and then you go back to them. There's a certain delay, but the first time we heard about anybody wanting to take a look at the property was last Wednesday.
Understand.
Are there any other questions of the applicants from the board?
I just have one more. So let me get to, out of the 5 acres, there's 3 lots, but you're saying only 1 is buildable. Is that correct? Because the other 2 are too small. So you're only going to disturb an area for 1 lot.
Yes, sir. What I'm saying is if we're not able to get the RPA eliminated on the site, there's still 3 lots.
Okay.
Am I correct in concerning that the 3 lots are going to be much smaller than the whole 5 acres? There's going to be some left over. Is that the impression I'm getting? You're going to build smaller houses instead of bigger houses? Hello?
Mr. Spencer, I'm not sure if you're muted. We can't quite hear you.
Okay. I don't think I am. I haven't got my thing up there.
I think the sound has gone out on the end of Spencer and Julie, Mr. Spencer and Ms. Steele. So if they can work on the sound, it just all of a sudden went out. It doesn't look like it's muted, but we definitely can't hear you anymore.
Yeah, John, we hear you well, John. You're not muted.
Nope, that didn't do it. If you like, you can go ahead and log out and come back in, or maybe change your audio settings. Something might have changed. Okay, we see you saying give us 1 minute. Gotcha.
Mr. Pope, we do have, I believe, at least one public speaker signed up. So if you're amenable, we can ask the public speaker to speak while we wait for the applicant to get their microphone fixed.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, I'm getting ready to promote them now. Hold on just a moment.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Vaughn, if you could take your self off of mute and put your video on, that would be great.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Are you able to turn on your video?
No. I can see you guys, but you can't see me, I suppose.
Okay. Is that permittable, Hannah?
Are you asking me?
Oh, no, you're good to go. Go ahead and speak,
Okay.
Mr. Vaughn.
Okay, I'm Willie Vaughn. I live at 2 South Lane, and I live on the northwest end of the property. And behind 4 homes, there's 2 through 8, there is a revenge that water flow. And I've been here 21 years, and it has been almost earth-shattering to keep the flow of water going down to the point that it does not flood my garage out. On numerous occasions, I've had to go out to the drain with a leaf rake, not being able to see the drain, the water is so high, and try my best to rake the leaves out of the drain to allow the water to go down. Between each of our properties, I've heard pundit, I've heard wetland, I've heard marsh. I call it water above the surface, water above the ground between each of our properties. And it doesn't take a big brain to make this occur. It's very tough. After living here 21 years, on numerous occasions, I've had to call the city to ask for their assistance in clearing out this drain due to the rainfall. The last 2 times, they told me because of floods in other areas of the city, they could not help me. So I have spent hours out there at this drain trying to clear the leaves and other debris so that the water will flow downward and to prevent my home from being flooded out. Each of us in this area, because you may not have received a written statement, we are all totally opposed to having this designation changed from wetland for that reason. You can come and stop by my house and you'll see my porch, which is about, I guess, 4 or 5 inch concrete. It's split down the middle because of erosion. So we are adamantly opposed to having this designation changed. I think the city did the proper job by designating it as wetland. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vaughn.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, sir. Mr. Spencer, are you back with us?
No, unfortunately, we can't hear you. I'm not sure what might have happened.
And you can call in, to see, can we get them the phone number to call, and they can, if they have a cell phone, they can leave the video up, but they can also call in and we can hear them through your phone.
Yes. Okay. So Mr. Spencer, give me just a second. I'm going to pull up the telephone numbers.
You'll need to make sure that you turn off the speakers for your computer. Otherwise there'll be a lot of echo.
All right. So the first number is 1-888-475-4499.
If it asks for a participant ID, you don't have one, you can just click pound.
Okay. And so as soon as I see you appear in the attendees, I'll go ahead and allow you to speak. Actually, so Mr. Spencer, are you able to type into the chat a telephone number where we can call you and you could just answer the phone? If you type the telephone number in the chat, we're the only ones that can see it. And so I will place a call for it to call you. Okay, saw the thumbs up. Okay, I got the telephone number. I'm going to be calling you in just a moment. Okay, we should be hearing you now. You might have to hit *6. There we go. I think you're there. I'm going to ask them. There we go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, good. Let me mute this TV here. Okay. All right, so the last question I heard, I believe, was out of the 5-acre site, even the way we're proposing to do it without an RPA issue, how much land are we disturbing out of the 5 acres? The answer as we look at it is it's a little over half an acre. So you still have almost 4.5 acres of undisturbed woodland that we won't be touching regardless, even with a designation of no RPA that we hope to get tonight.
We agreed with the city to make that up.
Yeah, and we actually up front, back in 2019, agreed with the city that if they wanted a conservation easement over all of that, we'd be happy to do it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Does any of the other board members have a question for the applicant?
I've got a question for Hannah Sabo, if I could. Is that possible?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to clarify. After the determination was made, I'm just taking this from the notes here. The applicant had not provided a resource delineation for the right-of-way. In the absence of the official delineation, a site visit and inspection by city staff was performed. The inspector observed that the wetlands on the Mallory parcel and those of the thoroughbred property are connected through surface flow through the undeveloped right-of-way. So our inspector from Hampton said it is connected through surface flow. And we have not heard, is that correct?
Yes, and we actually have the inspector. She's the manager of the land development inspections and environmental inspections. So it's Kim Michael, who can, I think, answer your question.
Okay, that'd be great if she could.
So yes, sir, we did do an inspection, I believe, back in October. When we went and looked at that undeveloped right-of-way, I found that there was no obvious disconnection between the Mallory tract and the subject site. I did walk quite a ways onto that undeveloped right-of-way, and again, I found that there was surface flow, and again, there was no obvious disconnection between the Mallory tract and the subject site.
And then I guess the only other thing we're.
Can I jump in and ask a quick question? Our second submittal, which called for all this, came back on May 28th. I want to know, I guess, why we get something on May 28th if the inspection wasn't done all the way until October. If you didn't know that this was an issue and you didn't go out there and do your due diligence to make sure there was surface flow, how did you write the letter on May 28th?
So I can respond to that. When there is development proposed and an applicant submits a subdivision or a site plan or any type of development, the zoning ordinance requires that we have a resource delineation. And there are times when I can waive that requirement or waive pieces of it. So it is up to the applicant to provide us with a resource delineation. So we had requested that. And like I said, it is up to the applicant to provide that information as kind of a last resort. If we can't get the clarification that we need, then we do have our inspector go out. But we would prefer to have a resource delineation and a core confirmed delineation. So as we spoke about at the time the delineation, or as the time the termination was written, that right of way was not delineated at all. And so since they had asked for a resource delineation, I needed to have some information about that, our right of way. So at which point we did send Kim out to do that inspection. So thank you, Kim, for that. And again, when writing the when writing the determination, I have to use the information that is the best information available to me, including that core confirmed that there is one wetland on the Mallory tract and that there was no separation in that right of way and there was surface flow.
And so what was the difference between the first submission and the second submission for you? Because on the first submission, we had no comments from zoning other than one, nothing to do with wetlands or environmental impact. And yet, after we close on the property, it suddenly comes up.
I'd like to answer if I could. I don't really know. I don't think this is really irrelevant. The timeline of the subdivision comment letters and submittals, I'm not sure is relevant to the inquiry before the BZA. I mean, we'd be happy if the board wants the staff to go through that in more detail. I think we have that information and we can, but I think I just would like to refocus us on the question of what's before the board, which is the determination correct or should it be overturned? I mean, there were a lot of emails and submittals back and forth as part of that subdivision process, and I don't really know where this line of questioning is going or whether it's relevant in any way.
Well, I think it's relevant that it's a comment on the second submission, but not the first submission, and then it's a comment with really no evidence because the evidence apparently wasn't gathered until October. I'm just trying to let the rest of the board understand the timeline of how things went.
Okay, so, well, sir, to that answer then, I was trying to avoid going into this, but there is a separate appeal process under the subdivision ordinance where if you receive a comment denial and a comment letter, there's an appeal process for that. That's not before this board. So if you had disputed that comment, then there's a separate process that you could go through for that, but that's really not what's a question here, which is why I'm trying to avoid it. We can't go back in time on that and changed those comments, and it was not appealed by the applicant. So for the board, for the clarity of the record, those comments and what order they came in really is not before the BZA.
I have a question for staff.
Am I allowed to make a comment?
You hear me?
Mr. Pope?
Yes, ma'am.
When the inspector went out in October, I assume that's October 2020. That again was the 10th wettest, the wettest month in 10 years. If there happened to have been a rain event or whatever prior to that site visit, that would be an abnormal situation. It's an abnormal year. And so to say that there was surface flow, I've been out there so many times, there has never been surface flow, and there certainly is not surface flow across that easement, with the understanding that I don't know when that person went, what the weather conditions were, and with the understanding that it was such an abnormally wet period of time. There was no, there was an implication made that the information was not presented to the city for that easement. That easement is owned not by the proponents of this project. So it was not submitted as part of the original wetlands delineation and was not looked at until Hannah asked us to evaluate that 30-acre easement. So when she did that, I looked at it in November and then submitted this, the information to the city. So it's not like it was something that was lacking that had not been provided by the applicant. It was provided when it was requested.
Thank you. Does any other board member have any questions of the applicant?
Yes. I have a quick question. I guess this is for the applicant and the city at the same time. Whoever wants to take it first. So the perennial flow that we're speaking of, does that have to be when there's not an event or just resting water or what? Because of course, when it's raining or storming, we're going to have flow back and forth. But how do we determine perennial flow? Do we look at a course of time for a rain event, or do we just observe it as we can go out any time and see that there's some type of flow to and from an area?
So I can answer that from the city. We've actually, when there are large sites like this, we've had a couple of different cases where a consultant is making the claim that there are things like microtopography that's separating these and isolating these wetlands from one another. And we actually did a site visit with the Corps on a very similar site, and the Corps was there and agreed with our methodology of looking at surface flow and not, unless there are specific uplands indicated, that if there's no unless there are specific uplands indicated, if there is evidence of surface flow, that our methodology was correct. And we were consistent in applying it across the city. They actually said that they've seen multiple determinations that we've done, that we have been consistent in our application of that.
And with what you just said, Hannah, what does that mean about normal rainfall events? How does this look at things under normal circumstances?
I'm sorry, I'm not, are you asking me to define what normal rainfall is? I'm not sure what your question is.
The point I've been trying to make is that the city looked at the site in a month that was the wettest in a 10-year period. The DCR guidance document for resource protection areas states that non-tidal wetlands are contiguous to water bodies with perennial flow, and a hydrological connection by surface flow will exist during any year of normal rainfall. 2020 was not a year of normal rainfall.
Again, I'll say that we do have to use the information that is available to us, and based on the Corps' confirmation that there is one contiguous wetland, and there being no evidence showing that there is upland separating this parcel from that one contiguous wetland, and are seeing evidence of surface flow, I am, I believe, obliged to determine it is one contiguous wetland and contiguous through and connected through surface flow to that perennial stream north of the property and is thus an RPA feature.
I'm not debating that it's one continuous wetland because I certainly think that it is. There's probably areas of upland in there that were not specified. However, I have not seen, nor has anyone provided any evidence that there is surface flow in a normal rainfall year. There is no perennial stream other than perhaps a mile away, if that's how the crow flies from this site. You don't get to perenniality until you get on the other side of Commander Shepherd. You're in a bowl that doesn't drain on the Mallory tract, and there's no indication in the delineation confirmation that there's any perennial stream in there, and we can't go out and hunt for one because we'd be trespassing. We'd have to look at all of those ditches that are listed as intermittent and evaluate each one of them to see if any of them qualified as perennial, and I doubt if they would. They're just poorly made, man-made ditches that probably don't drain.
I have one last question for the applicant. And what do you I have my definition of what perennial is. What do you consider perennial as far as the definition?
The scientific definition of perennial depends typically on the North Carolina methodology, which requires a whole factor, like 25 to 30 factors be evaluated, including stream sinuosity, the type of species that live in the stream, the leaf litter, the soil content. There's this whole thing that you have to go through to determine that it's perennial. From a common person lay standpoint type thing, typically you're looking for a drainage feature that has water in it pretty much year round. If you've got a low area or a drainage ditch or something that occasionally has water in it, then that qualifies for intermittent or ephemeral, which does not meet the requirements under the Bay Act. The other aspect that you're looking at is making sure that when you're looking at those ditches on the Mallory Park property, that they're being evaluated during a normal rainfall year and 48 hours after a rain event. So there's a lot that goes into that determination, but just having a spot where water collects, that's just a puddle.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I just wanted to say, and Julie's determination is not from going out to this site one time, but going out there several, 10, 20 different times to make her evaluation. This is not something that she went once to make a determination. She's been out there many times during many different seasons, during many different rain events to come up with her conclusion that she's come up with.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any other questions of the applicant? Do I hear a motion?
I'm sorry, can we just confirm to see that there's no one else signed up to speak?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Not that I can see.
Thank you, thank you. Sorry, Chairman, I just wanted to.
That's all right. That's all right. We need to get that on the record. All right. Do I hear a motion?
I make a motion to overturn the city's definition of the said property, considering as a RPA buffer. Thank you. What is it?
Do I hear a second to that motion?
Mr. Harris, this is Bonnie. Could you repeat that motion? I'm sorry, we heard a little, you were low volume. Could you just say again what you said? I'm sorry.
It's okay. I don't know the right language to use in this context, but I would say I make a motion to overturn the city's or the administrative officer determination on for this said property.
Okay, that's exactly the right language. Go ahead, you can finish.
Based on the applicant providing a preponderance of evidence.
Do I have a second? I'll ask one more time. Do I have a second? I'll entertain another motion.
I make a motion with the information that we have and the fact that we haven't heard back from the Army Corps of Engineers, but we have reached inspection by the city. I make a motion to uphold the determination of the zoning administrator. I move that we uphold this because of the zoning administrator was correct due to the fact that the non-tidal wetlands are contiguous and connected by surface flow, so they are an RPA feature.
Do I hear a second?
I second.
Call the roll, please.
Dr. Hasselquist,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
No. Nay.
Dr. Lett,
Yes.
Chairman Pope.
No.
Well, yeah, can the clerk read back those votes? Is that 2 yeses and 2 nos on the motion to deny, to uphold?
That's what it sounded like to me.
Okay, so that's interesting. And this is Bonnie speaking. You all, so that motion also fails technically on a tie. So we have 2 failed motions, but how it works with appeals, unlike variances where other conditions may be involved, is that the applicant is required to get the minimum of 3 votes, which is what we talked about at the outset of the meeting, to overturn the decision. So failure to get the 3 votes to overturn means that the decision is upheld. So I want to say that for the record, the zoning administrator's decision would be upheld at this point, and the applicant has the ability to appeal this to the circuit court within 30 days. But I think at this point, we have 2 failed motions different, but in no case did they get 3 votes to overturn. So I think the decision of the BZA would be that it is upheld, the decision.
Mr. Spencer, I think you heard her say that you have 30 days to appeal this.
Yes, I heard. I appreciate everybody's time and effort in looking into it, and we will see where we need to go to. We'll see how it goes from there. I appreciate everybody's time and effort. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Is there any other business to come before the board?
No, sir.
I declare the meeting over. Thank everybody for coming.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.